This conference will now be recorded.
We are, Chairman Alvarez, you would need to have your microphone on now.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the West Basin Engineering and Operations Committee meeting and a special meeting of the Board of Directors. And we are now calling that meeting to order. Do we have a quorum, Mr. General Manager?
Yes, Chairman Alvarez, we do actually have a quorum, and I'll run through roll call here. It is important to note that obviously we are here for the Engineering Operations Committee meeting. However, this meeting has been properly noticed as a special board meeting of the entire board due to a closed session item. So I will run through the roll call now. Director Scott Houston.
Here.
Director Gloria Gray. Director Don Deere.
Here.
Director Harold Williams.
Here.
And Director Desi Alvarez.
Here.
So we do have 4 members of the Board of Directors here and present.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any public comment?
Chairman Alvarez, we do not have any public comment, and I apologize, but if you could move your microphone just a little bit closer to you. I know it's a bit.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll move to the microphone. Okay, any presentations today?
Chairman Alvarez, we do not have any presentations.
Okay, the next regular item would be the action calendar, but I would like to pull out of sequence today and go into closed session. We have one closed session item, and we want to take that first. So with that, if you can introduce the closed session item, Mr. General Manager.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. As noticed in the agenda, there is one closed session item, conference with legal counsel with the Government Code Section 54956.9 D4, anticipated litigation, one case. And we will be stepping into closed session where there is a call-in number provided. So for those directors that are joining us virtually, if they could mute themselves here in this meeting and go ahead and call into the closed session, we'll begin that meeting shortly.
Very good. We're all back?
This is Martin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You have a mask right here.
Is anybody talking?
Is
I'm not
anyone
hearing
listening?
anybody speak.
Hello,
Hello?
Hello,
Director Williams here.
Director Deere here.
Director Alvarez?
President Williams, we are waiting for Chairman Alvarez. He'll be joining us in just a minute.
Oh, okay.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay. Okay, we're back to open session, and our general counsel will give a brief report on the closed session discussion.
Thank you, Chair and the directors. The board considered one item in closed session, it's potential litigation. After consideration, the board directed staff to work on an amendment with the JCI contract, and the amendment will be brought to the board for ratification in open session.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll return to the regular calendar, and in the next item up is the action calendar. And we have 3 items under the action calendar. The first item up is an agreement for groundwater modeling and reporting services. And Mr. General Manager, would you please go ahead and introduce that item?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. As you mentioned, the next item that we have is item 5A, agreement for groundwater modeling and reporting services. For this presentation, we do have Jamie Burkhardt, our water quality and environmental compliance analyst.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board. Can I just confirm that everyone can hear me well enough? Great, thank you. I'm here today to present the action item on page 3 of your board packets. First, I'd like to give a little bit of background information. The West Coast Basin Barrier Project establishes a hydraulic barrier to prevent seawater intrusion into the West and Central Basin groundwater aquifers. One of the designer waters produced at the ECL facility in El Segundo is this barrier product water that is made for the seawater barrier. This advanced treated water is blended with potable water before being injected. The project is highly regulated by multiple agencies and various regulatory documents. Annual groundwater modeling is a requirement of these regulations and in the permit as well, and it's also a required discussion topic within the 5-year engineering report. Interra currently performs this annual update to the groundwater model and submits a technical memorandum to be included with the annual compliance report for the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. Groundwater modeling is also a component within the 5-year engineering report. The report updates regulators on project facilities, water quality, groundwater flow and transport estimates, operating plans, and overall compliance during the time period. It is required to be updated every 5 years and to be stamped by a PE and a PG. A request for proposals was released to Negometrics Mercell on October 6th, 2021 for all work related to the annual and 5-year reports for groundwater modeling. This includes 5 annual technical memorandums and 1 5-year summary memorandum as well. The work also involves reviewing and stamping of the next 5-year engineering report. The full scope of the work is provided in Attachment A. Approximately 186 organizations received this RFP notice and 5 accessed the invitation. An optional pre-proposal meeting was held on October 13th, 2021, which was attended by representatives from 4 different companies. 4 proposals were submitted by the deadline on October 26th, 2021. 3 people evaluated this proposal, including an outside evaluator from the Water Replenishment District, who is a West Coast Basin Barrier Project partner and acts as the water master for this adjudicated basin. All 4 companies were qualified and responsive, but Intera received the highest score from all 3 evaluators upon the conclusion of the evaluation process. Intera's modeling experience with indirect potable reuse projects and Title 22 permitting in Southern California, paired with the existing relationships with WRD and LA County Department of Public Works, demonstrate their capability to meet reporting requirements and provide high-quality service to West Basin for the full duration of the contract. Their competitive pricing and ability to implement optional tasks based on regulatory requirements in the next 5 years show important flexibility for such a heavily regulated project. Optional tasks include recalibrating the model, completing a 20-year predictive recycled water content simulation, and responding to regulator comments regarding the 5-year engineering report. These optional tasks will only be initiated if requested by West Basin staff. Pricing summaries for all 4 companies are provided in Attachment B. A summary of the final evaluation scores and rankings is provided in Attachment C and in the table in your board packets. I will now read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board authorizes the interim general manager to enter into an agreement with Intera Incorporated for the groundwater modeling and reporting compliance services, including optional tasks for a period of 5 years in the amount of $185,586.65 plus a 10% contingency for a total not to exceed amount of $204,145.32. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. To get started, Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a couple of just quick questions here. First of all, where is Introvert located?
Intera they are a local company. Off the top of my head, I think that they're in Torrance.
Oh, okay. Have we ever used them before?
Yes, we have. They are currently providing this service for us.
And we're happy with that.
Yes, we have been pleased with their overall performance so far.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Any of the other directors would like to make any comments? Director
Chair.
Houston.
Great. Actually, Director Williams beat me to the punch because I saw their local business. So based in Torrance, I see. Okay, excellent. Thank you. And it looks like 2 of the other bidders were also local, but it sounds like we've had a good successive run with them. And so I think this is fine from my perspective. So thank you, Jamie.
Director Deere, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
No, can you hear me?
Yes,
Am I blocked?
we can
Oh,
hear
you're
you.
good. We heard you.
I have no comments, so thank you.
Okay. I have one comment, and that has to do with the fiscal impact. It does say that the money is budgeted in the barrier operations compliance activities budget. And again, that's kind of a pool of money. So if we move this forward and this comes back, this is about a $185,000 contract over 5-year period, did we say? Yes, 5-year
Correct.
period. So it's about $40,000 a year. I would appreciate getting, this is the amount of money that is in the budget, whether it's $200,000, $2 million, I don't know what it is. And we are using up $40,000 or whatever the actual amount is for this coming fiscal year for this contract. So that's my request. I don't think that would be that difficult to do. We don't need to do it now. We just need to, when this comes back, do that. With that, if it's okay with you, Director Williams, we'll just move this forward to the regular board meeting.
I concur.
Okay. Thank you. Next up.
Thank you.
The replacement of the phase 4 microfiltration membrane. Mr. General Manager, would you like to go move that item forward?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. As you mentioned, the next item is 5B, replacement of phase 4 microfiltration membranes. This item does begin on packet page 12. We do have Susanna Lee, our senior operations engineer, here for the presentation. But I'd like to hand this off to our executive manager of engineering operations, Mr. Barkev Nasrullian.
Thank you, EJ, and good afternoon again, board of directors and members of the public. So this item here, the phase 4 microfiltration membranes. In the past E&O committee meetings, we've talked about, at least the last 4 or 5 E&O committee meetings, we've talked about the impact of the Hyperion upsets on our facilities, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it later on in today's committee and talk about some of the cost impacts. The phase 4 microfiltration process has been impacted significantly, and Susanna's going to talk a little bit about that. What we have, the microfiltration systems that are active these days at our ECL facility are the phase 4 and the phase 5 systems. And what we're going to go through here in this memo is we're going to highlight the need for replacing the microfiltration membranes in order for us to start production again for production of recycled water for our barrier system. So what we have in this report are a couple of options for the board's consideration. And the question that's really being asked here is how fast do we want to get the barrier production up, and how much do we want to get it up, how soon, and that will help decide on which option to proceed. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Susanna to go through some of the details and go through the 2 options and the recommendation, staff's recommendation. Susanna.
Thank you, Barkev, and thank you, EJ. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board. You have the copy of the memo in front of you on page 12. And as Barkev introduced the item that we're really here to discuss about which options that we're going to go forward in replacement of these membranes. Just a little bit background before we go into the options. I just want to go over on the phase 4 system. It was originally commissioned in 2006 as part of the phase 4 expansion project for the barrier system. And since then, since 2017, we have been using this system for Chevron boiler feed as well. So this system is also providing water for the Chevron boiler feed. And originally, this system was fitted with polypropylene microfiltration membranes and has gone through 2 additional polypropylene microfiltration membranes. I just want to note this because since 2017, after an extensive retrofitting and piloting effort, West Basin has pre-qualified the only PVDF microfiltration membrane that can fit into the phase 4 system. So the last set of polypropylene membrane that were replaced in 2012 were completely replaced between 2017 and 2018. And as these membranes approaching the 5-year mark, staff was originally preparing for membrane replacement in next fiscal year, 2022 and 2023. So coming back to our focus of this memo now, as Bark had mentioned, the Hyperion upset has impacted the system severely. And as I mentioned in last month's monthly update, one of the issue was that as a result of the unprecedented bad water quality with heavy solids loading, majority of the top clovers have developed cracked. And because of this cracked, the system was not able to perform the backwash and CIP cleaning effectively. So the membranes themselves have inadvertently became irreversible foul, and the membrane permeability has been reduced by more than half. So staff was analyzing and contemplating what route and how to bring barrier system back online. Staff analyzed what the phase 4 system can produce, as well as phase 5, and compared against the injection target for the barrier system, as well as the Chevron boiler feed demand. Expedited membrane replacement will be required to allow us to ramp up production in a more quicker way. So as Bark have mentioned, staff consider 2 options. So option 1, as stated on page 2 of the memo, is what staff is recommending, and it includes the sole source procurement of all 6 units of microfiltration membranes with the only pre-qualified PVDF membrane from Sinor. And this is recommended because this will be the quickest way for West Basin to ramp up close to the allowable recycled water barrier injection level. And this also will be the lower of the unit price that Sinor is providing, with $839 per unit. And now moving on to option 2. Option 2 will be replacing 2 units of the phase 4 modules, and those 2 units were replaced earlier on, so it will be approaching the 5-year mark earlier than the rest of the 4 units. With this option, this will be a slower ramp-up schedule for West Basin. It will take us up to 60 to 75% of production over the course of next 12 months. But as part of this option, however, staff is also requesting the board to allow staff to immediately pre-qualify and pilot testing the other known compatible membrane, and hopefully that can become a competitive bidding after the completion of the pilot testing. So table 1 on page 3 of the memo lists all the details of the 2 options, and it includes the amount of supplemental potable water that will be needed for to meet the barrier injection limit. So as barrier production makes up the biggest portion of the West Basin recycled water portfolio, it is important that West Basin to bring this product back to normal operation as quickly as possible. So staff is therefore recommending option 1, as it will allow West Basin to maximize recycled water production the most expeditious manner. During this historical drought that California and much of the West Coast is currently experiencing, by selecting option 1, West Basin will be staying close to the vision statement stated in the 2017 and 2022 strategic plan that states that we'll be providing sustainable and drug-proof water services, enhancing the quality of life and economy of our communities. So with that, I will read the recommendation that the board authorize the interim general manager to implement option 1 and to enter into an agreement with Sinor Inc. for the procurement of 2,526 microfiltration modules for not to exceed amount of $2,368,248.83, including shipping and sales tax. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Moving forward with committee member comments. Director Williams, do you have any questions or comments on this item?
Well, yeah, just one question again is, where are these folks located?
I'm sorry, where are these what?
Where is Sinor located?
Their headquarters is listed as New York. The membranes are actually being manufactured in China.
Ah, okay.
So there will be long lead time for the membranes to be delivered. So therefore, it's important for us to take action now.
Now, will delivery be caught up in the slowdown at the ports?
That is a very good question. Right now, I talked to the final rep. He's anticipating the first 3 units can be delivered to us by sometime in February, and the remaining 3 units will be delivered by August. So this is their current estimate right now in terms of delivery schedule.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, Director Deere, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, Director Houston?
No, thank you.
Okay, Susanna, maybe you can expand a little bit more on the whole issue of delivery. On one hand, this is kind of an important item in order to get production of recycled water back up for the barriers, but there is a delay. So can you expand? You mentioned that a portion of it will be available by February, a portion will be available by August. How soon is that commitment on the part of the vendor? And is this a transportation issue, or they have to still fabricate and transport? Or,
they have the portion of the membranes fabricated, but majority of the membranes are still needing to be manufactured. So partly they're waiting on raw material as well, as we all know that raw material is a problem. But at this point, they do not anticipate any delay in terms of shipping and delivery. It's more in the manufacturing process.
Okay. And this is now being provided by a pre-qualified vendor. So these membranes have been basically reviewed and are acceptable to the district.
Correct. And prior to the events in July, we were still able to, the membranes were able to still perform very well. And one of the reasons why we did not start more efforts in preparing for the procurement is because we thought that there will be actually lasting longer than 5 years. However, due to the events, now we're where we are, we need to expedite the procurement replacement of these membranes.
Okay. You also mentioned in the presentation that you will be pre-qualifying vendors. Could you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So in 2017, Sinor was the only PVDF that we that was made known to the district that can fit into the phase 4 system. In anticipation of the replacement, staff actually started talking to other vendors about possible replacement or compatible membranes, so then we don't have to sole source back to Sinor. So Evoqua or Memcor is the original OEM for the phase 4 system, and they have since developed a compatible membrane that can possibly be used for phase 4. So we were actually in discussion with them to start piloting in anticipation for next year's procurement. That's, do you need any more information on that? So we talked.
The other issue you mentioned is that these membranes are fabricated and sourced in China. Is there an alternative to that as we move forward in the future?
Since this Sinor is the pre-qualified vendor right now, so we will be searching to see if there are other membranes that will be sourced here in the U.S. I believe the Memcor is sourced in Australia. So I'm not, we'll be doing a survey and we'll be beginning a more formal pre-qualification protocol and process. So we'll update the board once we find out if there will be other options.
So when you guys do the pre-qualification for the next round of this, you will look for alternatives to having everything sourced in China.
Yeah, that will be part of the process that we're looking at. Of course, with membranes, there are limited vendors out there that are spending R&D money to retrofit into an original like OEM system. So at this point, we're just aware of Evoqua and Slash. FilmTech is the only other membrane that could possibly fit in phase 4 system.
Just talking a little bit more specifics, since we have two options before us today, and the difference in price in them is one's about 800,000, the other's about 2.3 million. So that's a big difference. In both cases, we would be producing 100% of our contractual requirements for Chevron.
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Both cases, whether we go with the with the option 1 or option 2, we are going to produce 100% of our contractual obligation for Chevron feed water.
Yes, so that we've always put the refinery demand requirement first. So barrier inadvertently, then we have to see what's the balance of what we can produce. So that's why getting the membranes, as many membranes as possible, will help us to ramp up the barrier production. Does that answer your question?
So the difference, which is basically between option 2 and option 1, is 3 times as much money, is really to be able to produce all the barrier water so that we don't have to use imported water.
Correct.
Okay. Given that we're in a drought and that we're trying to minimize the use of imported water, I think that it would be beneficial for the board to move forward with maximizing recycled water production for the barrier as well as our contractual obligation for the refinery. And that goes to the item about funding for this. It is not an item that was previously scheduled. So it's kind of an unscheduled expenditure. And I have 2 questions. The first question is, this is driven in part because of the Hyperion upset. So is this one of the costs that we're going to seek recovery for?
Will be.
Then I can take that.
Okay.
I think in terms of cost recovery, I think the appropriate, we can bring that to the board to see if we can discuss that in a closed session. under the advisement of the district's council.
That's correct. I think with the direction that we've been provided by the board of directors, West Basin staff is tracking all of the associated costs related to the incident at Hyperion. We have in previous meetings discussed the impacts on our membranes and the need to actually have replacements sooner. So a prorated portion of the cost of those membranes are being shifted into the evaluation of the total cost of that for an in-depth discussion of the costs associated with the Hyperion incident. That we've received a recommendation by legal counsel to discuss the specifics of that in closed session.
Notwithstanding that this is in part driven by the upset at Hyperion.
Correct.
And we are going to be seeking to recover and be made whole for our extraordinary expenses that we've incurred as a result of the Hyperion upset.
That's correct.
So this is one of those items that will be included in whatever we seek reimbursement for. And if I heard the last part of your comment, it won't be 100% because some of this is not attributable. Although we probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Hyperion upset.
That is correct, and it really is important to note that as we continue to track these issues and we continue to work with the board of directors, obviously the intent is to seek options and potential opportunities to recoup those costs through various options. So how we get reimbursed is still up for discussion.
I have my opinions, and I think I've made it clear. I think we ought to seek reimbursement for all these expenses. Okay, the other item is, since this is not a planned expenditure, it's proposed that this be taken from the reserve, and I think that is appropriate. So I'm very supportive of that. It's a one-time expenditure. It was unanticipated, unplanned for, and we do have the money to cover it. So with that, Director Williams, are you okay moving this forward to the full board? You gotta unmute yourself. Oh, there you go.
Yes, I concur.
Okay, then we'll have this come before the board at our next board meeting.
Yes, and thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez and members of the committee and board. And I did want to highlight just one additional thing. Obviously, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the fact that we are in a drought, and maximizing the use of recycled water in this case is conserving water. And I did want to note that potentially this could impact or add additional 2,360 acre feet of recycled water to be produced and utilized, which is the equivalent of about 7,080 household usage for the entire year. So I want to say thank you for the direction from the committee and board. And then secondly, I did want to note, as we always strive to do in looking at some of these issues, to look at every different option and opportunity. So I do want to say thank you to staff. We met on this issue on several occasions, presented several different options, and we're able to come back with two, I think, pretty good options, and one, of course, that would conserve quite a bit of water. So I want to say thank you to our engineering and operations team as well.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the converted filters Title 22 booster pump station at the Ed C. Little facility. So, Mr. General Manager, would you please introduce the item?
Yes, this is item number 5C. As you mentioned, it's the converted filters Title 22 booster pump station at the Edward C. Little water recycling facility. This item does begin on packet page 18. We do have our engineering supervisor, Ms. Veronica Govea, here for the presentation. But for an introduction of the item, we do have, again, Barka Masurlian, our executive manager of engineering and operations.
Thank you, EJ. Directors, yes, this item talks about a new facility, a new infrastructure facility that the district has been contemplating and proposing for some time. Some of the board members may recall seeing some presentations at the CIP update a few months back. This booster pump station provides, allows us to fix a bottleneck in capacity in our filter system. The filtration systems that we have supply the Title 22 recycled water that goes out into the distribution system, but that also supplies the satellite plants. So again, the filtration systems are so critical for not only our customers, our irrigation customers out there, but also our contractual obligations to refinery customers that are downstream of the satellite plants. And so for us, it is important for us to address some of the bottlenecks in our filtration systems. And this pump station would increase the capacity from 2.5 MGD to 10 MGD and provide us with needed reliability and redundancy in our filtration system, which is essential for us to meet compliance in our distribution system. So with that, apologize, Veronica, if I stole a little bit of your thunder. I will hand it over to Veronica.
Thank you, Barkev. Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, President Williams, and members of the board. Please follow me to item 5C, page 18 of your package. As Barkev mentioned, the Title 22 booster pump station is a capital improvement project that consists of the installation of a new pump station and related ancillary that will benefit the recycled water system at ECL in overall the distribution and the satellite facilities. This project will allow the converter filters to achieve their 10 MGD capacity that, due to hydraulic conditions, have only been achieving a 25% capacity of what they were designed for. By installing this pump station, we'll be able to pressurize the system to make sure that the water is conveyed from the pretreatment area to the filters basins. The design was designed by M&S engineers. The package was completed and we started our bidding process in September 21st of this year. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting in October 5th, and then it was followed by a walk through the site on October 7th. There was 970 vendors that were that received the bid solicitation package through our BidNet system, from which 15 companies attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting via telecommute, and seven companies attended the walkthrough to the site. 5 bids were received and publicly opened in November 2nd of this year. The results of the bidding process are summarized on Table A. Please note that there are some asterisks noting some of the mathematical errors that we were able to find while we were doing the review of those documents. The bidding results indicate that Pacific Hydrotech Corporation was the lowest responsive bidder at $1,869,600. Engineers' cost estimate was $1,981,973. We have checked the references of the lowest bidder, and everybody seems to be happy with their performance. Funds for the project are allocated within the current fiscal year 21-22, and they will be also allocated accordingly to fiscal year 22-23. With this, I will read the recommendation and I will open the forum for questions. The recommendation reads as that the board authorizes the interim general manager to enter into an agreement with Pacific Hydrotech Corporation for the construction of the converted Title 22 or T22 booster pump station project in the amount of $1,869,600 plus a 10% contingency for a total not to exceed contract amount of $2,056,560. With this, I conclude my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
All right, Director Deere.
No, I don't.
Director Houston.
No, thank you.
Okay. So can we go over again what exactly this is? Let's put it this way. If we don't do this, what happens?
Well,
If we don't, oh, go ahead, Barker.
Veronica, let me give this a shot first. If we don't do this, we risk delivery of compromising our delivery to the Title 22 system. So, for example, you may recall that we presented a few times about our rehab program for our filtration system. We have 14 filter basins, and we've so far rehabbed 8, 9, and 2, 3 of them. And we have an ongoing process to rehab the rest of the filtration systems. Earlier in the month, when in the summer, we were up to using 8 filters, and we had only 9 available. There are other filters that are going to undergo a process of rehabilitation in the next few years. So we greatly need the redundancy and the availability of capacity in the filtration system to meet those demands. So back in when we talked about the master plan a few months ago, we said there's about 40 million gallons per day of capacity in the filtration system. Well, that 40 also accounts for the 7.5 that's missing right now. So that assumes that we would have this increase in capacity to have that 40 available for us. And with the increase in capacity that we are providing at the Carson facility, and then anticipating the demands in the summer, we're hoping to get this pump station online, as well as rehab a few more filter basins to put us in a good place for that delivery and extend the life of the existing filtration basins.
Okay, so these improvements are being made at the Ed C. Little plant.
Correct.
And they're predicated on the fact that we don't have sufficient capacity right now to get a full 40 MGD distributed throughout the system without increasing the pump capacity at the filter system.
We do have enough capacity. For the last few years, we do have enough capacity, but we're cutting it really close in terms of what's available. In taking into consideration the condition of the filters, especially after this summer, and the rehab work that needs to be done, but also so this pump station was proposed not only in consideration of the rehab of the existing facilities, but it was also proposed in potentially expanding the demand of the system as well. So that's a combination of those, the redundancy, the reliability, and potential expansion, potential increase in demands are the reasons for including the facility.
Okay. So this is a project that theoretically could be deferred 6 months to a year without substantial impact.
It could have some substantial impact, depends on the demands and depends on how much filtration basins that we would lose during the rehab process. We would have to put some filters down while we improve them. So we are hoping that it does not get delayed and put us in a position where we have to hold back some of the Title 22 flows up to the system.
But the actuality is that we're making additional investments at the Ed C. Little plant, and we're still dealing with an issue of procurement of a water supply for that facility.
The water supply is available until 2026, and we have to make measures to make sure that our contractual obligations are met until so forth.
But whether this is done this year or next year, you'll still be able to meet your contractual obligation.
Correct. We whether it's this year or next year, we want to make sure we get the contractual obligations secured. So with the rehab of filtration facilities that is it's absolutely needed, our recommendation is to proceed with this project as soon as we can.
Okay, but we, in a year from now, may be in a much better position to know what are realistically looking at in 2026 with respect to a water supply than we are today. And whether we do this today or we do it a year from now, it's not going to it's not going to kill us. And this then presumes that we're going to come back and also rehab 2 filter basins.
We're going to be rehabbing all the rest of the filter
Right.
basins, not just 2.
So I'm a little uncomfortable with continuing to make investments until I'm in a better position to know what our water supply situation is going to be. So I'm not likely to support this, and this isn't one of those projects that's going to be debt financed. So we're going to be incurring debt, which I'm not supportive of, to commit a long-term commitment to debt when we don't have a long-term commitment to water.
That obviously comes with the risk of
yes, it does.
potentially cutting back on the
yes,
supply.
Yes, it does. I'm not predisposed to support this. So Director Williams, do you have any additional comments in light of my comments?
Well, yes. This has been the general way that we've done things in the past until now. I think we should go forward to the board and let the board vote on this.
Okay. All right, with that, we can move this forward. But I will not be in support of it for the reasons I just stated. I don't think the project is necessary. I don't think it's funded. And I don't think it is prudent to incur additional debt when we do not have a firm idea as to what's going to happen to our water supply in less than 5 years from now. And we will be in a better position to make that decision a year from now. The delay of this project for a year is not going to make a difference one way or another. And we need to focus on really procuring our water supply or looking at our long-term needs instead of continuing to incur debt for facilities that we may or may not be able to use, or use it in a completely different form and fashion and quantities. Okay.
Yes, and thank you, Chairman Alvarez, for your comments, as well as President Williams. In bringing this back to the board, staff will be prepared. We'll review the committee notes and be prepared to address your concerns or your comments, obviously, for this item. And we will bring it to the full board without a recommendation of the committee.
Right. And
also, I think that we should include in that discussion our practice of debt financing projects, because we really have to do that, in my opinion, because how do we don't make money off of our recycled water at the level that you think we would if we were going to pay as we go, because we would not be very far along if we were taking that practice, doing that practice today.
Duly noted.
the other item that could be considered, instead of debt financing, this could be paid for out of the reserves, like in the previous item. So that should be brought back for consideration.
That's true. That's possible.
Again, staff will be prepared to discuss those options, obviously taking direction from the full board. And so we'll be prepared to answer that question and address that issue.
Okay.
Very good.
So with that, we'll move forward to the information calendar. The first item up is an update on the water facilities operation.
Yes, thanks again, Chairman Alvarez. This item does begin on packet page 29, as you mentioned. It is item 6A, a water facilities operations update. As always, we do have an entire team here to present on this item. The item will be carried by Susanna Lee, our senior operations engineer, Barka Masurlian, our executive manager of engineering operations, Uzi Daniel, our manager of operations, and Frank Fuchs, our operations supervisor. Take it away, team.
think we will start off with Susanna.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
we can.
All right. So as usual, we'll begin with a review of the water quality that is going into ECL. As the graph depicts that the water quality has improved substantially during October, and at the height of at the beginning of the event, we were seeing water quality as high as 400 NTU. For the most part during October, we were seeing around ranges from 10 to 40, 50. So it has improved significantly. And in terms of our filter treatment and product, we have met most of our turbidity requirement. So that was a substantial improvement in terms of our treatment process. So just going to the next page, as you can see, this is just a more closer look for the last 4 months. As I mentioned, the water quality has improved, not only in terms of the turbidity coming in, but also as you look at October, the variations and this has become a lot tighter, just with a few exceptional spikes here and there. So as we continue into November and December and looking at recovery, we are hopeful that we'll be, at least on the disinfected tertiary side, will be going back to normal production soon. So on the next page of the slide, just going over briefly on the ongoing responses for this event. As I mentioned, water quality has improved, and we're still seeing occasional spike, including today. I know Hyperion is bringing up a extra clarifier today. The water quality has spiked up to 50 again, and we're seeing a lot higher TSS. So that's just going to be ongoing practice that we'll have for the next 2 months, and hopefully that will decrease. Due to the fact that the barrier system was run for part of the quarter, we had to, the compliance team had to come up with a way to sample for the product water for the quarterly reporting purposes. So they came up with the sampling, and we're just trying to explain the non-representative water sample results, and we'll be submitting the report to the regulators this week. Finally, on the operational challenges, I mentioned last month that we were facing with ferric chloride shortages for the last few months, and just happy to report to the board that this challenges has kind of been resolved. We've seen, obviously, the water quality has improved, so we have reduced the ferric dosage substantially, and as well as the supply for ferric chloride has been stabilized, so we are making our inventory recovering, so that this challenge has been resolved. As the next challenge, as you're well aware, the chemical pricing is continued to be unstable due to the supply chain issues. So we'll be, as we getting out of the events now, we're meeting with higher chemical costs going forward. The third challenge, as you're well aware of our filter press, that really needing a rehab and some TLC. So the salts presses have been working nonstop because of the high solids that's been coming into our plant. So we recently, SUAS and their contractor have just finished repairing some of the short-term, interim repairing needs. and we are still looking at some of the longer term repair that will be needing, since the rehab project or replacement project is taking longer than needed. So finally, as we mentioned, we're just finishing cleaning up with on the the disinfection tertiary system. So we're getting ready to bring up both the pretreatment. We are going to be increasing disinfectant tertiary production. We were planning to do it today and tomorrow. However, due to the water quality spikes, we might hold off a couple of days, but we are planning to stop the use of potable water from the county by tomorrow. Hopefully the water will be stabilized. So we're starting to reduce that significant potable water usage for disinfectant tertiary. So that's a good milestone that we achieve. And the last but not least, microfiltration production, we just talked about during one of the items. So with this, with no questions, I'm going to be handing over to Barkav to talk about the cost impact update from this event. Barkav?
Thank you, Susanna. Directors, as you may recall from the last committee, we gave a little bit of an update on the cost impacts. This slide here, we're going to talk a little bit more about it today. Both share some September numbers, but also come up with a specific dollar amount that the board requested. This slide here is a recap of what we talked about last time. We talked about the costs went up 31% in July, more than doubled in August when it came to delivering recycled water. We also talked about for those 2 months we had to cut back 28% and 41% for those 2 months respectively. We shared some numbers about estimated loss of production by comparing the production of those 2 months versus the 3-year averages. And then we also talked about how much potable water we were using. That estimate was actually for 3 months at 2,200 acre feet. I think it was Dr. Hughes' questions about how much of that is imported water. You see the bullet point down there is that approximately 98% of that is estimated to be of imported water source, specifically because the potable water that we get straight imported water into to El Segundo and then into our plant at ECL, and then also we get water from the city of El Segundo into our Chevron nitrified facility from ECL. That's imported, 100% imported water as well. And then for our Carson facility, approximately 83% of the Dominguez area for Cal Water is imported water. Next slide, please. So this slide may look familiar. We showed the one for July and August last time. These are the September numbers, highlighting on the far right of the slide the potential increases per dollar per acre foot increases. So you can see from the subtotals at the bottom that again for September the cost on a dollar acre foot basis doubled, while we had to cut back deliveries of recycled water by 37% overall, and that includes all the different product lines of recycled water that we have. On the next slide, the board did request that we come up down with a dollar value, and for us to estimate the cost impact, we looked at 3 components. On the left side of the slide here, you got the estimated cost increase in recycled water production and delivery. What is the actual cost increase? And what we did for that is that we established codes and mechanisms within West Basin and its West Basin's O&M contractors to be able to establish how much money we're spending on that, whether it's for sludge management, for the chemicals, for labor, and as well as the potable water. That's one component. The one in the middle is the estimated loss in revenue. And then the third component is what is that impact on our facilities, our assets, and our membranes. So we were fortunate enough to have our asset management expertise from our Suez partners. They brought in their expertise to be able to estimate the cost, the potential cost of the event on our facilities in terms of if let's say if an asset life is for 5 years, but now because of this event, it's down to 4 years. What is the value, monetized value of that? So we looked at loss in asset lifespan. We looked at loss of membrane lifespan. What we also looked at, because of this impact, how much more maintenance cost will incur on us. And in looking at the consequence of failure, does it go up? The condition, the probability of failure goes up. And combined with those two factors, you can calculate the risk and monetize the risk as well. So we were able to do that as well in estimating the overall impact on the facilities itself. So we're going to go through each of these components. This is the first one here on this first table, is based on those tracking mechanisms that we put in place. The 3-month total impact, we are estimating at approximately $5.8 million for those 3 months. So that's including treatment costs, as well as distribution system costs, as well as West Basin costs, chemicals, potable water, everything. That's the 5.7, almost $5.8 million there. On the next slide, you'll see.
Go to the next slide. What is Suez other?
I'm sorry?
Line number 2. What is Suez other? What does that consist of?
So Suez other includes their chemical purchases. There are certain types of chemicals where Suez purchases. It includes their lab services, and it includes their administrative costs. There are several different other categories under those. That's what Suez other is. So again, lab services, chemicals, administration, and certain type of maintenance costs. For example, if we were to buy a new valve or something like that, the material cost of that is under other.
Right, but the administrative cost, what is that?
Administrative costs includes their support and administrative costs, so includes everything else basically. But Susanna, do we have a breakdown? We can certainly come back with a breakdown of what the administrative cost is.
I mean, is that a percentage of the Suez labor? In other words, we're paying the additional labor plus an administrative fee on top of that for labor that would have, I understand the additional man hours, but I don't understand the additional administration unless I want to just mark it up.
I think basically that's just the markup that is included for their portion, like the OBCs. It's not necessarily the administrative costs, but I mean, included in that category would be like vacuum trucks that we use to remove solids, membrane cleaning costs, and cartridge filters that we had to replace every week the last month.
I understand that. I'm just talking about the administrative charges.
We can come back with a breakdown of an administrative cost.
But it seems to me that what paying is just markup on labor that was already available. They're just working additional time, and it's one of those things that it just seems takes advantage of the situation. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So for the next cost breakdown, that's the estimated loss in sales on packet page 47. Suzanne, if you can. Oh, there it is. And I just want to highlight that this is the difference between the sales number, the revenues coming in from the sales, versus the 3-year average. So you can see that the total, the 3-month total there is close to $5.2 million.
Okay, so when we have those loss in sale, that's the loss in recycled water sale. But
Correct.
those were offset in part by imported water sales that we had to make available to fill our obligation.
Yes, but we also asked the refineries to cut back in certain situations. We didn't, in certain situations, putting in extra potable was not enough. We had to kind of cut back a little bit more. So it wasn't like we keep the demands as is and then we just add potable. It was more of a case-by-case basis. We put as much potable as we can, but at certain times it was not all the demand. We had to cut back the demand to meet compliance.
So we cut back on delivery.
Correct.
And what kind of an impact did that have on our customers? Were they able to do with less, or did they go to, like for example, the refineries? How did they handle that delta?
Some refineries may have a separate option, and they could pump more groundwater, and others have to just adjust their operations for that period of time where they had to cut back on it. So it's a combination.
Okay. So the reality is, in the case of some of the refineries, they do have alternatives to our supply of water. They've pushed them.
They have connections to the local distribution system. Yep.
Okay.
They have connections to the local distribution system through West Basin or their own in some cases. And then a couple of refineries have their own groundwater sources.
Okay.
As well.
Maybe you guys can come back and give us a breakdown of how that affected each of the refineries. With respect to the barrier just kept taking 100% imported water?
Correct.
The barrier happens to be on reduced deliveries themselves because they have a big rehab project, so that was convenient, but they're taking all potable.
Right.
Okay. The next category is the estimated impact on facilities. So that gets broken down into 4 components here. You have the estimated loss of asset lifespan. So what Suez did here, they went around and looked at the particular assets that took a beating at ACL. Not everything took a beating, but there are particular types of assets in particular processes that you could definitely assess and say the life of this asset now is shortened by this event. So they took that and they were able to estimate the potential cost of that to $418,000. Same thing with the membranes, as we talked earlier in this committee meeting about the phase 4 membranes. Estimated loss of membrane lifespan close to $1 million. And then we also put some assumptions together and estimated the increase in costs, not for just this year, but for the remaining lifespan of those particular assets. And then the risk as well, looking at the consequence of failure and the probability of failure in assessing the risk. So the overall impact on the facilities themselves at this point is estimated at around $2.1 million. So what does this mean?
Just clarification for, at least from my understanding. So if I go to the second bullet, the estimated loss of membrane lifespan, that $1 million or $950,000 would be the portion of the $2 million that we just said we need to spend in order to get production up to basically 100%?
Right. So, for example, we may have mentioned it earlier that we look at membranes, and certain membranes, let's say they have a 5-year lifespan. And let's say we were thinking of replacing, well, the MF membranes for phase 4, for example. We were thinking that it's 5-year, rule of thumb is 5 years, but we look at performance as well. So in looking at the phase 4 membranes, we said, they're performing really well. We can actually stretch them until next fiscal year and replace them then. And then the event happened and it brought it back down and said, no, we can't, we're replacing it. So we effectively, stole a year off of the lifespan of the membranes. So that year is estimated in these costs.
Okay, so
Not for the full replacement, but basically the taking away of the year from the lifespan.
So these costs that we're tracking here are effectively what we're going to be trying to recover in terms of an impact to the district, or for cost recovery going back to Hyperion. So we're going to spend over $2 million to replace the filters, which we would not have had to replace, but we're only going to ask for $900,000, or am I misunderstanding something?
Because we were going to replace membranes anyway at some point, the estimation is that West Basin was going to spend money and replace membranes anyway. So the fact,
So the answer
the
is,
900,000, it's not just for the membranes we talked about today, but other membranes too. How much is the incremental cost?
so the answer is, so that I'm very simple, is that we're going to spend $2 million, but we're only going to recover 900,000 of that. All right, I haven't a problem with that, and I will make the analogy this way. I have insurance, I have a roof, I have a fire. Okay, that roof has had a 20-year warranty. It's supposed to be replaced in 20 years. It's been there for 10 years. If I want, but I have insurance, so all of a sudden I have to replace the roof. The insurance company is going to say, I'm only going to give you 50% of the value of that roof. I'm going to say that's not acceptable, because if it wasn't for the fire, I would not be replacing this. I want a new roof. That's what I pay for. So when we go and ask for money back from Hyperion, we should ask for all of the money that all the expenses that we've incurred. Because if it wasn't for that, we would not be incurring those expenses. So as we track these, and we should be able to say, here's an expense, and I think the $2 million that we just agreed to spend, or to have the board consider spending, I should say, is an expense that otherwise would not have happened, and it is an expense for which we should be reimbursed. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so those are the 3 categories. If we were to combine them, the next slide, the approximate numbers, 5.8, 2.1. If you added those up, you're looking at a 13.
Chair Alvarez,
Yes.
Director Houston has a question.
There we go. I do have a quick question going back on that real quick, Director Alvarez. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the prior item, when we're talking about those new membranes, and to understand Director Alvarez's point, but yet at the same time, though we're not replacing those or looking at replacing those just because of the incident. Am I right here? We were going to have to replace those anyways. Maybe the life got shedded off a little bit, but I just want to be clear I'm understanding the point being.
You're correct.
That is correct. Just if,
Because my understanding, I get where these numbers are coming from, loss of membrane lifespan, but this wasn't just those particular membranes. This is a number of the different, all the membranes in some capacity, I guess. So, you know, unless I'm misinterpreting, I'm just saying I don't put these all in the basket of that other $2 million, you know, the way that was articulated. Right?
Correct, Director Houston. Your the way you described it is what this estimate is about. It looks at multiple membranes and West Basin at some point, particularly let's say the phase 4 membranes, we had that scheduled for next fiscal year. We were going to replace them. We were going to spend money replacing them, and this estimate accounts for the shortened lifespan.
Yeah, and then again, this is just a part of those and others, right? The 945 is a part of those and others. It's not those in whole, right?
it would, Director Houston, it would be nice to see the numbers. You know, back to my analogy, very simplistic. You have a roof, you're gonna end up replacing it, but you have to replace it today versus at some future date because you had a fire. So
well, yeah, no, I do get that. I get that.
So therefore, they're going to be asking to be made whole because the driver for doing it now versus at a future date, which you would have had to do, is the fire. So in this case, I would like to see those costs. The board at the end will make a decision of how much we're going to seek recovery from, but I want to see that you know, here's the cost that we're incurring because of the fire, not because we would have had to at some future date. If it wasn't for the fire, we wouldn't be incurring them today.
Okay, yes, maybe not so quickly, but you know, anyway, I think in the long run, once we, you know, there's time it's going to take to figure out those true numbers where we would have to look at, you know, any compensation. So anyway, I just want to make sure that we're all understanding what this is rather than the full amount, that burden is based on the incident. So anyway, it is, you know, my perspective, the way I interpreted it, Director Alvarez, versus what you were saying, I just wanted to make sure. I think there's a distinction there, but it's obviously it's a conversation for down the road when we get all the numbers come in. I do get that a bunch of equipment is now going to have to be replaced much quicker than normal. So, but anyway, I just, you know, conversation for another time, but I want to be understanding. Thank you.
Director Williams, you were going to say something?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. So you can see the $13.1 million combines all three categories together. Again, the assumption there is that the first two categories, that's just for the 3 months. And then the third category, estimated impact on facility, that is for the estimated lifespan of these facilities, of these select facilities that got mostly impacted. That's a 2.1. So this number is to date. We have several. I'll be happy to end this conversation, I guess, with kind of like an update of where we're at. We were down to 1 million gallons per day of potable for our Title 22 system today. We were at some point at 7 million gallons per day, supplementing the Title 22. We went down to 4, and then for the past week, we've been bringing it down with extra cleanings that we've been doing to 1 million gallons per day. We were ready to switch that one off today. We did get a notification from Hyperion that they're getting they're placing another reactor clarifier online today. And so they expect higher NTUs for the next 48 hours. So we chose to keep the potable for a few more days to see what happens with that. On the Carson facility, we stopped potable water supplement on the Carson facility, so that's good news. On the Torrance facility, we stopped potable on the nitrified. There's still a little bit we're bleeding a little bit of potable on the MF, but that's only because the MF performance is down. So that's not related to the Hyperion, the little bit of potable water that's left on the Torrance facility. Chevron nitrified, approximately half the delivery is still potable, and we're looking at changing that in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And then boiler feed, we still have 1 MGD of potable feeding the Chevron boiler feed. And we're looking at modifying that in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And then what remains after that is the barrier system, and we talked about that. The critical aspect for the barrier is going to be the phase 4 microfiltration membranes and the improvements that we're doing on the clovers that hold the microfiltration membranes. So with that said, we can proceed to different subjects unless there's any other questions on the costs. Okay.
Well, this is Director Houston. If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think really fast, I think I just want to make a couple of comments on this whole part right here, the presentation, because, and by the way, I was flipping through here. This is a very lengthy presentation in whole, so it might as well stop in the moment and do it. I just want to say, because, you know, this is something that we are continuing to work on and track, and I'm glad you guys brought this forward so we can see and the public can see how much money this has cost us so far, our ratepayers, and dealing with it. And the staff has dealt with this diligently because it's been very, very, very tough. So really all I wanted to say is I was listening to this and writing some notes because, you know, we all know that this was a very significant impact. It was significant for the environment. It was significant for our beach. It's significant right here where those of us who live in El Segundo have had to deal with this. And then we're also seeing the impact on our equipment. So obviously the lifespan of a lot of the equipment has been shortened, you know, it's been damaged. Our water sales are down and we're affected. We're having to use potable instead of recycled. So, I mean, you know, what you all have brought forward, as we asked, was to see it in our face, the dollars and cents, as well as that impact. And we're still going to try and figure this out in subsequent months. So I guess on the one hand, I'm very thankful to see this. And then secondly, I think this is something that the board, we gotta concern ourselves and talk about it. However, we're supposed to do that regarding the cost recovery, because this really impacted us and it really impacted our operation. So anyways, you know, Mr. General Manager, I know that you'll be working on this with us. We've already probably done some of this previously, but it's not lost. This is really good. It's good for everyone to see, and it's good for the public to see. We all love recycled water. We love the relationship we have with Hyperion, but a major upset like this affected our operations significantly and our plant. And it's, you know, it just shows you when these systems do not work as they're designed, you know, there's significant ramifications. And so anyways, I know we want to get the cost accountability, figure out how we can be made whole, but also how our plant physically can be made whole with the equipment. And so anyways, I'm looking forward to that, but this was very enlightening. I just want to tell you. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. One point as we move forward with the presentation, Director Houston point is that this is a lengthy, it's already almost 6 p.m. And so if we can just maybe just hit the highlights of what's left, because I think we're going to need to wrap it up. I need to leave at 6 today.
Okay.
So I apologize for, because you do have an awful lot of important information here, but we do kind of wrap it up.
I'll speed through my slides here. We'll try to make it as quick as possible. On this slide, we'll just highlighting some of the maintenance issues. In the middle, you can see the clovers that arrived for the phase 4 system, and so that's going to help us get back online. On the next slide, the next few slides are, we wanted to give the board a heads up on our facilities that are located at Chevron's property. West Basin has a couple of tanks, storage tanks, 1 million gallon tank, 1.6 million gallon tank. And we have piping and we have a pump station at the Chevron facility. And we wanted to bring it to board's attention some of the efforts that operations have been doing. We have asked, you can see in the next slide, we've asked consultants to help us. And then these are the facilities that help supply the Chevron boiler feed for the refinery. That's close to 4 million gallons per day on average of low pressure and high pressure boiler feed to Chevron. So on the next slide, you'll see a graphic of the pipelines that get to Chevron. You can see a little bit of where the storage tank is located. The effort that we're doing in operations is that we're trying to register the assets that are out there, perform a condition assessment, see what condition they are in, and that informs us into what are the potential R&R projects for these facilities moving forward. So in the next slide, you'll see that we conducted a comprehensive asset registry effort. On the next slide, you'll see results came back into what are the conditions of these assets. And then on the next slide, you'll see that some of our next steps here is to either get into a new maintenance agreement with Chevron, where they are maintaining these assets. We also get in the process of defining if refurbishment is needed and when it's needed for the district, and also potentially consider the future of the assets, whether we want West Basin wishes to keep the assets or potentially consider an option of handing over the assets or transferring or selling the assets to Chevron. Again, these are just a heads up. Further discussion is going to be coming towards the board in the coming months. So with that, I'll hand it over to Uzi to talk about compliance.
Sure. And thank you, Barkev. Good evening, directors. I'll keep this brief. These are just a few of our update slides. I did want to call out one thing. I think everyone works hard. The directors have a lot of decisions to make, and the small victories are worth celebrating. The 5-year engineering compliance report, we actually had, who you saw earlier, Jamie Burkhart, a junior staff engineer. She wrote that, took a month. We did it in-house. And Susanna dusted off her PE stamp, signed that. But I think it's kind of nice when we can celebrate some of our junior staff that are doing good work and are blooming as a result of the work they do at this district. So thank you, everyone. Next slide, please. This next slide, again, zooming through this, is a regular update on the service we provide for our potable water customers, some of the different activities going on in both the purveyor program as well as with our connections. Next slide, I believe, will be turned over to Frank Fuchs to take us home. Thank you.
Good afternoon, directors. So I'll try to go through these slides quickly. Again, this is our regular update of the recycled water distribution system activities. I just want to highlight that Introvert has been still conducting quite a few, taking quite a few samples throughout the distribution system, just related to the Hyperion event. And then we've also added a line here for a number of site inspections that we conduct every month. And those are site inspections that are conducted of existing recycled water customers by our distribution operations tech. Next slide. And this is just moving on to some of the customers that we're currently working with over at SoFi Stadium. This is the Hollywood Park Retail Phase 1. It's off of the corner of, what is it, Prairie and Manchester. I apologize, Prairie, over by the Hollywood Park. There's no additional updates on this. We anticipate that that'll be connected in April of next year. Moving on to the next slide. And then just south of the SoFi Stadium, this is for the Inglewood Basketball and Entertainment Center. And so we are working with the developer for this site. They would like to construct 2 new recycled water service connections per West Basin standards. They are proposing to use recycled water for irrigation, for cooling towers, and also for flushing toilets and urinals. And staff is working with them to develop an agreement for this work. And so we anticipate that we will come back to the board with this agreement next month for consideration. Moving on to the next slide. This is just an update for the Torrance Technology Center. This is the second phase. These are 4 new service connections that the developer constructed per West Basin standards. West Basin has an agreement with this developer, and our engineering staff and our operations staff have been working with them to ensure that these are constructed per West Basin standards. And then moving on to the next slide. And then just our monthly update on Topgolf. And we've already mentioned that the golf course is connected to recycled water. The lakes are using recycled water. There is one section of irrigation that still needs to be connected. It's next to the golf court, I'm sorry, the parking lot. And we anticipate that all that will be connected in March of next year. And then these are just some photographs of a swivel L, which is a backup potable water system in case our recycled water system is down. And then moving on to the next slide. This is for the Nash Street Exchange. This is next to the Raytheon site, next to the Edwards C. Little water recycling facility. And staff has been working with this developer to inspect the new irrigation system for these buildings. It's anticipated that those will be connected until next year. But I also want to highlight that it was recently announced that the Chargers training facility is planned to be constructed next to that Raytheon facility as well. It's just on the other side of that Nash Street Exchange. We've already been in communication with representatives of that site to start discussions to be able to provide them with recycled water. So as soon as we have more details, we'll be able to provide the board more updates on that. And that concludes our presentation.
Okay. I think it was a very good presentation. I want to emphasize that at least pending final decisions, I would like to see all of the actual costs that we are incurring. And then we can decide how to recover those when we pursue our cost recovery for the Hyperion upset. So, Director Williams, do you have any comments?
Nope, nothing more than that last report was very good. I liked all the rest, but I really enjoyed that one. Thank you.
Okay, and Director Houston, anything else to add?
The only thing was Frank was really good. He took the words out of my mouth because at the end I was going to ask about the LA Chargers, which I understand is going to be at that site where Raytheon's redeveloping. So I'm glad to hear you guys are already in touch with them and trying to figure out where the recycled water component might be on that new facility. And I'm really glad to see these great updates. So, you know, let's keep moving forward. And thank you, Mr. Chair, Director Alvarez. Thank you.
Okay. It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to need to leave. I think that we have one more information item, and I think that can be deferred.
Yes, Chairman Alvarez, I was going to say, why don't we just move this along to the last item was item 6B, capital improvement program update. We can move that to the full board. We'll have staff available if, of course, the information is there in the presentation. However, if the board would like to pull the item at the full board meeting, which I believe is on the 22nd, we'll have staff on hand that can run through it at that time.
All right. I'm not quite sure we need to do that at the full board meeting, but
it would be at the board's discretion.
and then the moving on, we did the full session already. Any additional director's comments to those that have already been made?
None here. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
So then we can move on to adjournment and
Mr. Chair.
tomorrow is Veterans Day. Oh.
Yep.
Director Houston, I think, is trying to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Houston. I apologize.
Sorry about that. Really quick. I was, you know, and I'm glad you're going to recognize the veterans as well. But I was also going to mention thank you to Uzi, who mentioned, you know, our staff who internally do some of the good work, on our own rather than utilizing a consultant to do that. So I just wanted to say thank you, Uzi. We acknowledge that very much.
Okay. And if not, then tomorrow is Veterans Day. And so as we adjourn, we do have several veterans here at West Basin. And let's adjourn in their honor. It's Isaiah Suarez, Sergio Nunez, and our board president, Harold Williams. Are all veterans. And we applaud you and thank you for all your service.
Thank you.
And Chairman Alvarez, just one additional update. Again, always wanting to recognize our veterans. The office will be closed tomorrow, as you mentioned. But I did want to remind everybody that we do have a special board meeting on Friday, November 12th. It is scheduled at 1 p.m. and it is scheduled to be an in-person meeting. So we will look forward to seeing everybody on Friday at 1 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.